There's quite a bit of banter and going back and forth in the bear hunting community about using chocolate in bear bait. There's quite a bit of misinformation out there and really downright myths. And this video today is going to clear that up with some facts that you're going to hear about chocolate and its effect on black bears. So in order to understand exactly where we're at with chocolate in bear baits, you have to go back to a little bit of history about how we got to where we are and why there's this all of this information floating around out there, some of which is not accurate, some of which is. Well, let's go all the way back to 2011, and there was a bear cub that was found near a bear bait dead, and that cub was tested and found that it had toxic levels of theobromine, which is the chemical in chocolate that can be harmful to black bears and to canines. You've probably heard don't feed your dogs chocolate. Theobromine is why. And this cub had consumed enough chocolate that it became toxic, and the theobromine caused heart failure, and the bear cub died of heart failure. In 2014, there was a disastrous failure of natural foods in New Hampshire. They had a drought that really took its toll on the berries, and there was a failure of the beech nuts, and the bears were hungry, and they were just really on the baits really hard. And this guy that was hunting with large blocks of chocolate had multiple bears that were eating large amounts of chocolate every day. Eventually, there were 4 bears found near his bait site that were dead, and then later there was another one found dead, but that one wasn't tested. So these 4 bears were 2 sows and 2 cubs, and they were tested for toxic levels of theobromine, and yes, they died from eating too much chocolate, and the theobromine was a toxic level that caused heart failure in these 4 bears, and probably the 5th one, but that one wasn't actually tested. So you can probably imagine that this created quite a firestorm against bear hunting and bear baiting in New Hampshire. And in order to just kind of put the fires out, New Hampshire just decided to just ban chocolate. It was the easiest thing to do to just quiet everything down. Probably not scientifically based, but it was the easiest thing to do. In 2015, they banned the use of chocolate in bear baits. Now, if we look at this objectively, you kind of want to say, okay, that was a gross overreaction, which it actually was, because it was a situation that was actually really hard to replicate because of the kind of a perfect storm of things that happened with the complete failure of the beech nuts and the berries, and one guy that had access to large amounts of huge clumps of chocolate that these bears were just gorging themselves on. I mean, you couldn't hardly replicate that situation if you tried. So it was a complete anomaly, but because of it, the state of New Hampshire lost the ability to use chocolate in their bear baits. And of course that means if you got a barrel of trail mix and there's one M&M in there, you're illegal. If you got a lot of cookies for bear bait and there's a couple of chocolate chip cookies in there, now you're illegal. So in my opinion, it was an overreaction. It's hard to educate people and reason with people who just become super emotional when they find out that there's 5 dead bears. So after New Hampshire banned it, then over the next couple years, there started to be some pressure to ban chocolate in Michigan. And it eventually went out to a public comment period if chocolate should be banned in bear baits. And of course, the anti-hunters took it and just ran with it. And eventually they banned chocolate in bear baits in Michigan. So it's a real hardship on the bear bait suppliers. It's a hardship on the bear hunters. I mean, if you go to a bakery or a store and get a garbage bag full of day-old donuts that they're going to throw in the dumpster and we're going to use them to bait bears, if that bag of donuts has a chocolate-covered donut in it, you're now illegal. And if you've got bait in this way, you know that all of these things in the bag, they're kind of mixed together, and no matter how you get it, there's going to be chocolate frosting that's going to rub on other donuts. It's almost impossible to just remove the chocolate in that type of a situation. Also, if you're buying buckets or barrels or bags of trail mix or any kind of cookies or the oatmeal and stuff like that that we typically use for baits, you're in a situation where if you put out a bait, there's one chocolate chip in there that somehow got in there, you're now illegal, and it puts the onus, I guess, on the game warden to decide if he should ticket you because you got an M&M or a chocolate chip in your bear bait or a little bit of chocolate frosting on a donut. Most game wardens, you would like to think, would overlook that because it's not a serious threat to the bears and it's a simple mistake. But putting decisions like that in the hands of some game wardens can be, yeah, it's not a good idea. So let's go a little more into theobromine and help you understand how much of a risk you might actually be putting the bears to if you're using some chocolate in your bait. Now, darker chocolates have more theobromine than milk chocolate. Milk chocolate doesn't have very much, white chocolate doesn't have any, but the darker the chocolate is, like dark chocolate or even like baker's chocolate, the more bitter it is, the more theobromine it has in it. And that's kind of a big deal because of like really bitter baker's chocolate is something that bears typically don't eat anyway. You should be putting stuff out that's more tasty to them. It's almost impossible to imagine a situation where you have dark chocolate or baker's chocolate with high amounts of theobromine that a bear would eat enough of it to even get sick, much less actually die from it. Obviously, what happened in New Hampshire with this person just putting out huge amounts of chocolate in big chunks, that's never a good idea. But let's take a realistic approach to this. A trail mix with some M&Ms or chocolate chips is never going to be a problem. Cookies with chocolate chips in them, or some kind of oatmeal granola that's got some chocolate chips in it and things like that. These are never going to be a problem. Now keep in mind that even if there's a really low amount of natural foods and the bears are really eating more and more of your bait, that's when the risk starts to go up a little bit. But in most cases, just try to avoid too much chocolate in your bear bait. I mean, if you look at your bait and you go, wow, there is kind of a lot of chocolate in there. There's a bunch of chocolate covered this and there's a bunch of that and chocolate candies and stuff like that. We really should avoid that. Chocolate syrups that you wouldn't want to pour on your bear bait and things like that. Just kind of keep in mind that you just want to reduce the amount of chocolate that you're using. You're probably never going to have an issue, but I would suggest that you err on the side of caution. It takes a lot of chocolate to harm a bear, way more than any of us would ever consider putting out. So there's one more thing that probably should be mentioned, and that is the issue of wolves or hunting dogs that might come across your bait. And I've got a lot of wolves on my baits at times, and they tend to eat the things that are more natural in nature. They do sometimes eat trail mix. I've seen them eat donuts and breads and things like that, especially if you're putting like used fryer oil on breads. They do eat that, and it could be that a hunting dog would come through and maybe grab a bite or two on his way through. But I've never actually seen wolves consume any significant amount of chocolate, so I don't think that's an issue at all. I have no fear really that I'm going to harm a wolf by putting some chocolate out if the bait has small amounts of chocolate in it. So I think you can agree that chocolate's really not a serious problem in the bear baiting the way it's done today, but always kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're purchasing bait and when you're accumulating bait in whatever way that you do it, just kind of minimize the amount of chocolate. So the other part of this is that if bears are eating small amount of chocolates and they eat enough that they start to get sick from it, they'll stop eating it. So the odds that any bear are going to come on your bait and eat enough chocolate to actually kill it it's almost zero. But it's a good idea to just be aware of this issue, and when you're purchasing bait, when you're putting bait out, just kind of keep an eye on how much chocolate is in it. Most of the baits don't have very much, and little small amounts are really not a big deal. They're nothing to really worry about. But if you feel like you're kind of putting out a lot of chocolate, you might want to reconsider. I thank you for watching this, and I appreciate to hear your comments in the comment section below. We'll see you on the next video.